Hi guys, and welcome to another video. I feel like I haven't sat down with you guys in a while, so I am excited for today's video. We are going to be talking about how minimalism has allowed me to live my dream life. So let's get into it. I used to think about how nice it would be if I could stay home with my kids, and how much easier life would be if we didn't have so many payments, and how better life would be if we just made more money so that we could live in a fancy house and take lots of vacations and drive nice cars. That was my dream. And I spent years believing the lie that a good life, the dream life, was a life where I had a bunch of money and could buy whatever I wanted and go wherever I wanted. And growing up, I never had a lot of money, and even in my working life, I've never made a lot of money, but I was always really good at spending the money that I did have and the money that I didn't have, credit cards, on buying things that I thought would make my life better. I was gonna be happier when my house looked like everybody else's on Instagram. I was gonna have more friends when I bought the clothes that everybody else was wearing. And I was definitely gonna fit in better when I did all of the activities that everybody around me was doing. But deep down, I knew that all of those things, especially the physical possessions, were futile. They didn't last. They were such a counterfeit for a happy, fulfilling life. But I spent way more of my life than I would like to admit on those very things. That was until I found minimalism and the freedom that minimalism brought me, because ultimately minimalism brought me clarity on what was important and what a meaningful life actually looked like to me. What a dream life looked like to me. I looked around and I realized that the lie that I had told myself about these things, these material possessions, were just that. They were a lie. I realized that my time, not my bank account, was my most precious asset. I realized that people should want to be my friend because they like who I am and they enjoy being around me. They shouldn't want to be my friend because of how much money I make or what social circles I run in. And I realized that trying to keep up with everybody else is ultimately an endless pursuit that always left me feeling behind and empty. So when I found minimalism, instead of looking at my possessions as these treasures that made my life better and that gave my life meaning, I started to view them with this sense of disdain, because I realized that time was my most precious asset and that these physical belongings were stealing that asset. They were stealing my time because I had to spend that time caring for, maintaining them, buying them, returning them when they didn't work out. And it really just made me angry because I realized that if I kept living this way, the only thing that I was gonna have to look back on in my life on my deathbed was a life full of chasing happiness from buying things, which never works out, we all know that, and trying to live a life where happiness was found in what I owned and what I did. And all that that does is lead us to live a life that is empty and inauthentic, and what a tragedy that is. And I've talked about how I came to know about minimalism and how I implemented it so quickly in my life. Within 1 week, I had our entire home and garage decluttered and emptied out. The week after that, I started to let go of activities that we were in and commitments that we had that just weren't benefiting us in any kind of way. We were just doing them because we thought we should. And once we let all of our stuff and those extra commitments go, how much more time we had and the joy that we had found in that time. And ever since then, we have never looked back. We've never changed strategies. I am still a minimalist and I still subscribe to the same philosophy that we can live a better life, a dream life, when we have less stuff. For me, I realized that my dream life looked like being work optional. And I'm not talking about work optional like the people in the FIRE movement, if you're familiar with that. I'm talking about choosing to be work optional, knowing that being work optional means less money, but it also means more time. And to me, time is a much more precious asset than how many zeros are on the end of a paycheck. I knew that I could choose to work more and therefore be able to afford more and buy more, or I could choose to work less. I wouldn't be able to buy as much, but I would have my time. In so choosing my time, I could also choose to do things that were more meaningful to me. Ultimately, I chose less money and less stuff, but more time. Now, I am so grateful for a husband who works very hard to provide for our family and who also is very supportive of me working as much or as little as I would like to. But by me working less, it means that I get to be home more. And that means that I get to take my kids to school and pick them up every day. It means that we're not stressing about where the kids are gonna go during spring and summer break when they're not in school. It means that I'm able to keep our home clean with very modest effort, and I'm not doing an all weekend cleaning marathon because I couldn't do anything during the week because I was too burnt out from work. For most people, these types of things are stressful, and they're stressful because people feel like they don't have enough time. But I would encourage you to look at where you are placing your time and where you're placing your value. My dream life is a life that is low stress and time abundant. And that's the life that I am living right now. It certainly has not always been this way, and it has taken a lot of very strategic decisions in order to be able to live this way. This type of life does not come easy. We live on a very modest $80,000 a year budget. We made a big decision at the very beginning of our marriage to relocate from Colorado to my husband's home state of Georgia. I had lived out in Colorado until I was 24 when I met my husband. He was stationed at Fort Carson out there, and we decided that because of the lower cost of living and the values in Georgia, that this was going to be the place where we wanted to live. So we made the big choice to relocate our entire lives. We also decided to buy a house when we moved to Georgia. However, we ultimately sold that house because it was too big, and we bought this house, a much smaller house, but one that we love dearly, and also one that was significantly less expensive and that we will have paid off far before we retire. We hope to have it paid off in the next 9 years. But that would not have been possible had we not made the decision to downsize our home. On top of that, once we sold that house, we also decided to pay off our vehicles. So we are still living a car payment-free life, and I hope and pray that that is always the case. And we're also very careful and diligent with our budget. Of course, we mess up and things don't go exactly to plan, but we try to be very careful with saving money and making that a priority and not spending every single dime that we make. But doing these things, making these sometimes hard decisions to go against society standards and live in a smaller home, to drive less fancy cars, but cars that are paid off, to live below your means and prioritize savings, and to enjoy the simple, really fundamental joys that we are given by our Creator in life that don't cost a dime. These are the reasons that we are able to live the way that we do. Why I am able to live my dream life. A life where I don't have unnecessary stress. A life where my kids and my home are taken care of. A life where my kids are gonna remember mom and dad always being around and not constantly working. A life spent doing meaningful work, like this YouTube channel, like raising my kids to be disciples of Christ, like working on our property where we're putting in a wildflower meadow, and life with a little bit of travel. Ultimately, a life that when I get to the end of it, I can look back on it with fondness and joy, and I can look back on a life that wasn't chaotic and overly stressful and always busy, but one where we were able to enjoy our daily rhythm and routine of life and all the little moments throughout our day. Because once we can start to appreciate and really enjoy the little moments in every single day, that adds up to enjoying every little moment of our lives. And that is where the dream life happens, when you can enjoy every little moment of the day. So today I encourage you to think about and consider what a dream life looks like for you. Is the big house and flashy cars and fancy clothes and higher social circles, is that stuff really what makes a dream life? Because for most of it, you have to give up your most precious asset in order to have those things, which is your time. And for most of us, when we give up our time, when we give our time away to work, to fund these things, that is time that's being taken away from what matters most, which is our family. So is giving up that time worth it? I always like to think about it from my deathbed, which is kind of weird, but if I look back on my life and how it unfolded and how I chose to use my time, what memories am I going to want to look back on? What memories are my kids going to have to tell their kids? Those are things that I like to think about because it really helps me to place focus and emphasis on what matters. So when you ask yourself questions like, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Am I doing meaningful work? Is my life one that I can look back on with genuine happiness and confidence, knowing that I lived out a meaningful life? And if you're not confident in those answers, then I would encourage you, regardless of where your life is right now, ask yourself what your dream life looks like. Ask yourself, what is actually important to me? What parts of my life am I living authentically, and what parts of my life am I living out of being influenced by society and the world around me? If I could have my time to do with what I wanted, what would that time look like? How would that time be spent? I would strongly encourage you, when you do this exercise, to get off of social media so that you're not being influenced by what other people around you are doing. Because maybe you're like me. Maybe you can appreciate and enjoy and be fulfilled in making a wildflower garden in your backyard until you see somebody on social media on vacation in Tahiti or somewhere like that, and then suddenly the wildflower meadow doesn't seem as good. So get off of social media and get those distractions and that influence away from you while you think about this. And then once you've thought about it, make a list of what things in your life need to change in order to make your dream life a reality, and then get to work, because life is short and time is precious. So make your life meaningful. Make it a life that you enjoy. Make it your dream life. I'll see you guys in the next one.